sold my family's land in Jamaica to pay for my daughter's entire lavish wedding in Atlanta. Her thank you was to hide me behind the kitchen trash cans because she was embarrassed by my presence. She thought her own mother was garbage, but she forgot one very important thing about the woman she just threw away. And I was about to remind her. Before I begin, thank you for being here, for being part of this community. If you believe in the power of a woman finding her voice and reclaiming her dignity, you are in the right place. Please let me know in the comments where you're listening from. It means the world to me. Now, let me tell you what they did to me. My name is Augusta Blackwood. At 71, my life was a quiet study in contentment, rooted deep in the rich red soil of Portland Parish, Jamaica. My home, a sturdy cottage painted the color of a ripe mango, sat nestled in the hills overlooking Port Antonio, its veranda catching the morning mist that rolled off the Caribbean Sea. This was my kingdom, a kingdom measured not in acres, but in the scent of night-blooming jasmine, the taste of the starfruit I picked from my own tree, and the profound, unbreakable peace that settled over the blue mountains at dusk. My days were a gentle rhythm of routine and love. I tended my garden, a riot of hibiscus, ginger lilies, and bird of paradise that was the envy of my neighbors. I cooked, the scent of pimento and thyme, a constant comforting presence in my kitchen, and I prayed, my faith as steady and as deep as the sea I watched from my porch swing. It was a simple life, a good life, but my heart, for the most part, lived thousands of miles away in a city of glass and ambition called. That was where my daughter, my only child, Amara, lived. I had spent my life as a teacher, a career of quiet service and patient instruction, and every spare shilling, every ounce of my energy had been poured into giving Amara the world I had only read about in books. She was my brilliant star, the beautiful, sharp-witted girl destined for bigger things than our small island could offer. Years ago, when she'd set her sights on a business degree from Emory University, a school whose tuition fees were a number so large it seemed like a misprint, I had not hesitated. I remember the day I made it possible. I stood with a heavy heart on a plot of land just outside of town, a piece of earth that had been in the Blackwood family for 5 generations. It was prime land with a view of the sea that could break your heart. I could feel the presence of my grandmother in the rustle of the palm leaves, the wisdom of my father in the unyielding strength of the ackee trees. It felt like selling a piece of my own soul, but when I thought of Amara's future, of the doors it would open for her, the choice was clear. I sold my birthright to a developer from Kingston for a sum that secured my daughter's American dream. I never told her the full story of the land, only that I had come into some money. The sacrifice was my own quiet secret, a foundation stone laid for the life she was meant to build, and she had built it. She graduated with honors and, with her sharp mind and even sharper ambition, had met and fallen in love with a young man named Julian Croft, a man whose family moved in the rarefied circles of Atlanta's elite. Now, she was getting married, and the wedding, of course, was to be a grand affair, a testament to their success. This brought us to my final great sacrifice. The venue Amara had chosen, a place called the Stanton Grand Manor in the heart of Buckhead, was a palace of marble and manicured lawns. Its rental fee was more than the value of my entire cottage. When Amara had called me, her voice a practiced blend of daughterly affection and steel-willed determination, she'd laid out the problem. Mama, she said, Julian's parents are handling the catering and the flowers, but the venue, we just can't swing it on our own. It's the only place that feels right. It's the kind of place that shows everyone we've arrived. I understood the unspoken part of the sentence. It's the kind of place that will impress his family. So I did what I had always done. I went to my credit union in Port Antonio, the one where I had saved for half a century, and I withdrew a staggering portion of my life savings. I wired the money to an account in Atlanta, a number disappearing from my world and reappearing in hers. It was my wedding gift, the foundation upon which she would build her perfect day. The phone call a week before I was due to fly out was the first tremor, the first sign that the ground beneath my feet was not as solid as I'd believed. I was telling her about the dress I'd had custom made by Miss Edna in town, a beautiful creation of royal blue lace. "Blue, Mama," Amara had said, a strange, tight note in her voice. The color palette is champagne, gold, and ivory. I sent you the mood board. Oh, I'd said, a little flustered. I must have missed that email. But this blue is very elegant, darling, like the deep sea. There was a pause. It's fine, she said, though her tone said it was anything but. Just try to be understated. Since you're paying for the manor, you understand why every detail has to be flawless for our guests. It's a reflection on all of us. Our guests, the words hung in the air between Jamaica and Atlanta. Not our family. Not our friends. I felt a small, sharp sting. A feeling I immediately dismissed. She was a bride, stressed and anxious. It was my duty as her mother, as the quiet, steady foundation of her life, to be nothing but supportive. I booked my flight from Kingston, packed my beautiful deep sea blue dress, and carried a heart so full of love and pride it felt like it might burst. I was going to see the magnificent life my sacrifices had built. I had no idea I was flying towards the most profound, most public, and most devastating humiliation of my entire life. The flight from Kingston to Atlanta felt like a journey between worlds. I left behind the warm human embrace of Jamaica, the easy smiles of the airport staff, the familiar rhythm of patois, and landed in the cool, climate-controlled efficiency of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. The air itself felt different, thinner, faster, less forgiving. I took a taxi to the hotel Amara had booked for me, a sleek, impersonal tower of glass and steel in Midtown. My room was lovely, with a view that stretched across the city's glittering skyline, but it felt sterile, a place without a soul. I spent the morning of the wedding in a state of nervous, joyful anticipation. I steamed my royal blue lace dress until it was perfect. I styled my silvering hair into an elegant chignon and applied my makeup with a steady hand. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman of 71, her face a map of a life lived with love and purpose. I saw a mother ready to witness her daughter's greatest joy. The taxi ride to Buckhead was another transition. The buildings grew grander, the streets wider, the shops bearing names I only knew from glossy magazines. We finally turned into a long, winding driveway, and there it was. The Stanton Grand Manor. It was even more magnificent than the pictures. A sprawling, white-columned mansion that looked less like a house and more like a monument to wealth itself. My heart swelled with a fierce maternal pride. My sacrifice had bought this. My love had made this fairy tale possible. I paid the driver and walked up the stone steps, my small clutch in my hand. The heavy oak doors swung open. I was met not by my daughter, not by my future son-in-law, but by a young woman with a severe haircut and a clipboard. "Welcome to the Croft Williams wedding," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Name?" "Augusta Blackwood," I said, my own smile warm. "I'm the mother of the bride." Her eyes flickered down her list. "Ah, yes, Mrs. Blackwood. Amara is just indisposed at the moment. Final touches. If you follow me, I'll show you to your seat." I followed her through the grand foyer, my heels clicking softly on the marble floors. We passed the entrance to the main ballroom, where I could see breathtaking arrangements of white roses and golden draperies. I could hear the gentle strains of a string quartet. But we didn't turn in, we kept walking down a long, quiet corridor, away from the music, away from the light. The corridor ended at a pair of swinging doors, the kind you see in a restaurant. The planner pushed one open. The air that hit me was warm, human, and smelled of cooking oil and disinfectant. It was the back entrance to the industrial kitchen, and there, tucked into a small service alcove just beside the doors, was a single, lonely chair. Next to it stood two enormous, gleaming stainless steel catering bins on wheels. One was for trash, the other for discarded plates and glassware. I stopped dead. I think there's been a mistake," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The planner's professional smile didn't waver. "No mistake. This is the place Amara designated, but this is a service entrance. My daughter expects me in the front row." "I only follow the seating chart I was given," she said, her voice cool and final. "Enjoy the ceremony." She turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the echoing corridor, my entire world tilting on its axis. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my mind refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. This couldn't be happening. It was a prank, a terrible, cruel joke. Any moment, Amara would come running down the hall, laughing, and lead me to my rightful place. But she didn't. The string quartet in the distance swelled, signaling the start of the ceremony. Guests I could hear were being seated, and I was here, alone. Just then, Amara appeared, rushing through the swinging doors from the other side. She wasn't laughing. Her face, a mask of perfect makeup, was tight with fury. She wasn't wearing the radiant glow of a bride, but the cold fury of someone whose meticulous plans had been threatened. "Mama," she hissed, grabbing my arm, her fingers digging into my lace sleeve. She pulled me further into the alcove as if hiding me from view. "What are you doing? I thought the planner would have seated you by now." Tears pricked my eyes. "Amara, darling, what is this? Why am I back here?" "Julian's parents had some last-minute RSVPs from their business partners," she said, her words fast and clipped, her eyes darting nervously back towards the main hall. There was no more room. It was this or nothing. "Please, don't make a scene, you understand?" The words struck me with the force of a physical blow. It was this or nothing. My presence, my very being, was worth less than a stranger, a business partner. I, the woman who had paid for this palace, was being hidden with the garbage. I looked at my daughter, at her beautiful, expensive white gown, at the diamonds sparkling at her throat, and I saw a stranger. A cold, calculating stranger who had weighed her mother's dignity against social advantage and found it wanting. Her husband, Julian, appeared behind her for a fleeting second, his face a mask of handsome indifference. He saw me, saw the tears welling in my eyes, and offered only a fleeting, guilty glance before disappearing back into the party. He was a coward, and my daughter was his queen. The ceremony began. I heard the muffled vows, the polite applause, all of it filtered through the swinging doors. Throughout the next few hours, I was subjected to a unique and constant torture. The whoosh of the doors opening and closing, the sharp, jarring clatter of waiters scraping uneaten food from plates into the bins beside me, the greasy smell of kitchen exhaust that clung to my beautiful dress. I was not a guest, I was an obstacle, a piece of furniture in a service hallway. I was invisible, I was erased, and from my sordid vantage point, through the crack in the doors, I could just make out the official photographer, a tall, serious-looking man named Marcus Vance, as he moved through the crowd, capturing every moment of my daughter's perfect day. To sit in a place of honor is to be seen. To sit in a place of shame is to be rendered invisible. For the next 4 hours, I learned the brutal meaning of that truth. From my exile in the service corridor, I became a ghost at my own daughter's wedding feast. I watched the celebration unfold in stolen glimpses through the swinging doors, a series of disjointed, painful vignettes. I saw Amara and Julian's first dance, their bodies moving as one under the warm glow of a crystal chandelier. I saw the toasts, heard the muffled laughter as friends and family praised their love, their success, their perfect union. Each cheer, each clap was a fresh wave of humiliation washing over me. My carefully chosen dress, the deep sea blue lace that had felt so elegant in my cottage in Jamaica, now felt like a costume for a fool. The scent of kitchen grease and discarded champagne clung to it. A foul perfume of my disgrace, the constant traffic of the catering staff became a rhythm of my isolation. They moved around me with averted eyes, their professional indifference a clear sign that they had been warned about the old woman in the corner. I was part of the scenery, no more significant than the fire extinguisher on the wall. The initial searing shock had cooled into a deep, profound grief. This was not a mistake. This was a choice. My daughter had looked at me, her mother, the woman who had sold her own history to build her future, and had decided I was refuse, fit only to be seated with the trash. The love I had poured into her my entire life had been returned with this singular, soul-crushing act of contempt. I felt a weariness so deep it settled in my bone, the weariness of a love that has been utterly, finally squandered. Then something shifted. The turning point was not a grand gesture, but a small, quiet act of human decency. A young man, a catering worker no older than my Amara had been when she left for college, came through the doors. He was carrying a heavy tray of empty glasses. He stopped, looked at me, and then at the gleaming steel bins beside me. His eyes, dark and kind, widened in disbelief. He looked back at me, and his professional mask fell away, replaced by an expression of genuine horror and sympathy. He put his tray down on a nearby counter, poured a glass of water from a pitcher, and walked over to me. He crouched down slightly, so he was at my eye level. "Ma'am," he whispered, his voice full of a respect I had not been shown all night. "I am so sorry. No one should be sitting here." He offered me the glass of water. Can I get you a plate of food? The salmon is very good. I looked at this boy, this stranger, and the dam of my composure broke. A single tear traced a path down my cheek. His simple kindness, his recognition of my humanity, was a stark and devastating contrast to the calculated cruelty of my own flesh and blood. I couldn't speak, so I just shook my head and gave him a watery, grateful smile. He nodded, gave my arm a gentle squeeze, and disappeared back into the kitchen. That small act was the spark. It was the flicker of light in the profound darkness of my despair. This boy, with no connection to me, saw the injustice. He saw me. And in that moment, the grief that had been drowning me began to burn away, replaced by something else, something hard and cold and clear. It was anger, a righteous, diamond-hard fury. They had not just forgotten me, they had deliberately hidden me. They had taken my money, the very foundation of this opulent display, and then tried to bury me and my country Jamaican roots behind the kitchen doors, lest I tarnish their perfect, curated image. My love, my sacrifice, my very identity was an embarrassment to them. Ugh. A thought, clear and powerful, bloomed in my mind. They thought they buried me. They didn't know I was a seed. My spine straightened. The weariness in my bones was replaced by a surge of pure, unadulterated resolve. I was Augusta Blackwood. I had survived hardship and heartbreak. I had built a life of dignity and principle. I would not be erased. And my eyes, now sharp and focused, scanned the room. I saw the guest book table near the main entrance, which I had passed on my way in. I remembered seeing a small stack of business cards next to the book. The photographer's cards. Marcus Vance. My mind, once clouded with pain, was now a machine of cold, clear logic. A plan, brilliant and devastating in its simplicity, began to form. They had used their money and status to humiliate me. I would use my own resources, my own intelligence, to reclaim my story. With a strength I didn't know I possessed, I stood up. My legs were stiff, but my purpose was firm. I walked, head held high, out of the service quarter and back into the main foyer. I ignored the surprised glances of the few guests milling about. I walked directly to the guest book table, and there they were. A neat stack of black cards with elegant silver lettering. Marcus Vance Photography. I took one. My fingers closed around the sharp, clean edges of the card. It felt like a weapon. It felt like a key. Holding it in my palm, I turned and walked out of the grand doors of Stanton Manor, leaving my daughter's perfect party behind without a single backward glance. I was no longer a victim. I was a client, and I was about to commission the performance of a lifetime. The morning after the wedding, the city of Atlanta felt different. The sterile gleam of the skyscrapers no longer seemed intimidating. It seemed like an arena, a place of commerce and contracts, a place where power could be wielded by anyone with the right currency and a clear objective. I sat in my quiet hotel room, the photographer's business card lying on the polished desk beside the telephone. The time for tears was over. The time for grief had passed. It was time for business. I did not call Marcus Vance in a state of emotional distress. I did not call as a wronged mother seeking sympathy. I waited until precisely 10 o'clock, a time of business, not of personal crisis. I took a deep breath, centered myself, and dialed the number. Channeling every ounce of the authority I had commanded for decades as a school teacher. I was not a victim. I was a patron of the arts, about to make a very lucrative proposition. A man's voice, professional and slightly weary, answered on the second ring. Marcus Vance Photography? Good morning, Mr. Vance, I began, my voice calm, steady, and infused with a formal Jamaican cadence that brooked no argument. My name is Augusta Blackwood. I am the mother of the bride from the Croft Williams wedding last night. There was a slight pause. I could imagine him trying to place me, perhaps picturing one of the well-dressed women from the front rows. Of course, Mrs. Blackwood, I hope you enjoy the evening. Your work is very impressive, Mr. Vance, I continued, ignoring his pleasantry. So impressive, in fact, that I would like to commission you for a separate, private, artistic project. This would be a new contract, entirely independent of the one you hold with my daughter and her husband. The weariness in his voice was replaced by a flicker of professional interest. Oh, I'm flattered, Mrs. Blackwood. What did you have in mind? This was the critical moment. I laid out my proposal with the precision of a lawyer. I would like to commission an online preview gallery of the wedding, a curated selection of images to be hosted on your website to go live immediately. I understand this is an additional service, and I am prepared to compensate you accordingly for this specific service. I am prepared to pay you 5 times your original fee for the entire wedding. A stunned silence met me from the other end of the line. I could almost hear the calculations clicking in his head. 5 times his fee for what sounded like a few hours of work setting up a web gallery. It was a life-changing amount of money for a freelance artist. 5 times the fee? He repeated, his voice now sharp with focus. Mrs. Blackwood, that is an incredibly generous offer, but my contract is with the couple. They have the rights to the images. I am not asking you to violate your contract, Mr. Vance, I said smoothly. I am sure your agreement stipulates a delivery timeline for the final high-resolution images. 6 weeks? 8? You will, of course, honor that. Deliver their USB drive of photos by mail, exactly as your contract states. My commission is for a separate product entirely, a password-protected online preview gallery, a teaser. As the client for this new commission, I would naturally have full creative control over its contents. I let the logic of it sink in. I was offering him a way to make an extraordinary amount of money without breaking his primary contract. I was exploiting a loophole with the surgical precision of a seasoned businesswoman. He was not withholding the photos from the couple. He was merely fulfilling a second, far more profitable contract first. I see, he said slowly, the brilliance and audacity of the plan dawning on him. And what images would you want featured in this preview gallery? This brings me to the second part of my commission, I said. I will need to hire you for one additional private photo shoot. This afternoon, if you are available, at the Stanton Grand Manor. I will arrange it with the venue. The subject of the photo shoot will be me. There was another long pause. This time it was filled not with calculation, but with dawning comprehension. I knew he had seen me. A photographer of his caliber, his job is to see everything, to be a silent observer of the entire event. He would have noticed the strange, solitary woman in the fine dress, tucked away by the kitchen doors. He may not have understood it then, but he would now. Mrs. Blackwood, he said, and for the first time there was a note of genuine respect, of admiration in his voice. I am available this afternoon. Send me the details. I will wire the full payment for the commission to your account within the hour, I said. Thank you for your time, Mr. Vance. I hung up the phone, my heart beating a steady, triumphant rhythm. I had assembled my army. It was an army of one. A man with a camera and a newfound financial incentive to see the world through my eyes. My next calls were to the bank to authorize the wire transfer and then to the events manager at the Stanton Grand Manor. I explained that I was the benefactor who had paid for the venue and that I had left a personal item behind. I needed access for 30 minutes to retrieve it, and I would be bringing a photographer to document it for insurance purposes. The lie was smooth, believable. Access was granted, but my work was not yet done. Before leaving the hotel, I sat at the desk, took out a sheet of the hotel's fine stationery, and began to write. It was not a letter, it was an invoice, addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Julian Croft. With cold, clear precision, I itemized a single charge, venue rental fee for Stanton Grand Manor. Beside it, I listed the full staggering amount I had paid. At the bottom, I wrote, a gift is contingent upon the recipient's gracious acceptance. As I was not treated as a guest, but as an outcast, the gift is hereby rescinded. This amount is now considered a debt, payable in full within 30 days. I sealed it in an envelope and sent it via registered mail to my daughter's home address. The social humiliation was underway. The financial reckoning had just begun. That afternoon, I returned to the scene of my humiliation. The Stanton Grand Manor was silent, its vast, empty rooms echoing with the ghosts of the previous night's celebration. The air no longer smelled of roses and champagne, but of lemon polish and the faint, lingering scent of industrial cleaner. It was a stage after the play has ended. The illusion stripped away, revealing the cold, hard structure beneath. I met Marcus Vance in the grand foyer. He was dressed in simple black, his cameras in a heavy-duty bag slung over his shoulder. He looked at me, his expression a mixture of professional curiosity and a deep, unspoken understanding. There was no pity in his eyes, only respect. Mrs. Blackwood, he said with a nod. Lead the way. I led him down the long, quiet corridor, my steps sure and steady. We arrived at the service alcove. The single chair was still there, a lonely sentinel. The gleaming stainless steel bins had been emptied, but they remained, silent witnesses to my shame. This is the place, I said, my voice even. For the next hour, Marcus Vance worked with the focused intensity of a true artist. I had given him only one instruction. I want you to capture the truth of this place, the loneliness, the disrespect, the dignity that refuses to be extinguished. He understood completely. He didn't just take pictures. He sculpted with light and shadow. He had me sit in the chair, my back straight, my hands folded in my lap, my expression serene. He shot from low angles, making the catering bins loom like malevolent steel towers. He shot through the crack of the swinging doors, capturing my solitary figure framed by the darkness of the kitchen beyond. He did close-ups of the elegant lace of my dress against the cold, hard metal of the trash bin. He took hundreds of photos, each one a silent, powerful indictment. In one series, he had me look directly into the camera. I did not look sad. I did not look angry. I channeled the collective strength of every Blackwood woman who had come before me, every woman who had faced disrespect with unwavering grace. I looked regal. I looked defiant. I looked unbreakable. In that moment, sitting on my throne of shame, I had never felt more powerful. When he was finished, Marcus lowered his camera. I have what we need, he said, his voice quiet. The gallery will be live by tomorrow morning. 2 weeks passed. It was the calm before the storm. I returned to my quiet life in Port Antonio, to my garden and my sea breezes. I waited. I knew Amara and Julian were on their honeymoon in the Maldives, posting glossy, sun-drenched photos on social media for all their friends to see. They were blissfully cocooned in their perfect world, unaware that their narrative was about to be stolen from them. The email arrived in my inbox on a Tuesday morning. It was from Marcus with the subject line, "Gallery is live." It contained a simple password-protected link. The frantic, hysterical phone call from my daughter came that evening just as I was watering my orchids. The sound was so raw, so full of rage and disbelief that for a moment I didn't recognize her voice. "Mama," she shrieked, the sound tinny and distorted over the thousands of miles. "What did you do? What did you do?" I held the phone away from my ear, waiting for the initial torrent of fury to subside. "Amara, darling, what are you talking about?" I asked, my voice a calm, serene island in the storm of her rage. "The photos, the wedding photos. Marcus sent us the link to the preview gallery. We sent it to everyone, to Julian's parents, to all our friends." Her voice broke on a sob of pure, unadulterated horror. "It's just you. It's hundreds of pictures of you sitting by the garbage cans. You've ruined us. You've humiliated us." I let her words hang in the warm Jamaican air. "Humiliated you?" I replied, my voice as cool and as clear as the water in the White River. "My dear, I simply commissioned a piece of performance art, a reflection on the choices that were made on your wedding day. I thought it was important to have a permanent record." But why?" she stammered, her anger collapsing into pathetic, desperate confusion. "They're horrible. They make us look like monsters." "Do they?" I asked quietly. "Or do they simply show the truth? You bought a beautiful stage, my love. You paid for a perfect story, but you wrote me out of it. So I decided to write my own, a story about a mother who flew 1,000 miles to see her daughter get married and was seated with the trash. It seems to be a very compelling story. I imagine your friends find it quite memorable." "You have to take it down," she wept. "Call him, take it down now. And what is this letter, this bill? You can't be serious." "Ah, the invoice," I said, my voice gentle but laced with steel. "I am perfectly serious. A gift requires gratitude. There was no gratitude, so there is no gift. Only a debt. That gallery is my art. The bill is my business. As for your wedding photos, the ones of your first kiss and your perfect cake, I'm sure Mr. Vance will deliver them exactly as his contract states, eventually." I could hear Julian shouting in the background, his voice a furious, impotent roar. I could hear my daughter's ragged sobs. They had built their world on a foundation of my sacrifice and then deemed me unworthy of standing on it. They had called me an embarrassment. I had just become a legend. "I have to go now, Amara," I said, my voice soft and final. "My orchids need tending." I hung up the phone, my hand perfectly steady. The house of cards they had so arrogantly built was collapsing in on itself, brought down not by a storm, but by a series of quiet, beautifully composed photographs, and one single legally binding invoice. In the rarefied social ecosystem of Buckhead, Atlanta, image is not just everything. It is the only thing. It is the currency of acceptance, the armor of status. And the one thing that ecosystem cannot tolerate is a story that reveals the ugly truth beneath the polished veneer. My preview gallery was not just a collection of photographs, it was a social bomb. The link, which Amara and Julian had so eagerly blasted to their entire social circle, spread like wildfire. Friends sent it to other friends with captions like, "You will not believe what Amara did to her mother." The story became a legend in their world. Whispered at brunch tables at the St. Regis and over cocktails at the Cherokee Town and Country Club, Amara, the beautiful bride with the perfect wedding, was instantly recast as the villain. The ungrateful daughter who took her Jamaican mother's money and then hid her by the trash, Julian was her weak, spineless accomplice. Their carefully crafted image was shattered irrevocably. They were no longer seen as an elegant power couple, but as classless, cruel children. The important business partners of Julian's parents were appalled. Friends stopped returning their calls. The social ascent they had been so desperate to achieve was over. They were pariahs in their own paradise. The invoice for the venue landed like a second grenade. The sudden, massive debt, legally enforceable and morally indefensible, was the final nail in their financial coffin. By the time the USB drive with the actual happy wedding photos arrived in a small padded envelope 6 weeks later, it was utterly useless. The damage was done. Who could they show them to? Every photo of their smiling faces would now be seen through the lens of their profound disrespect. The images were not a memory of a beautiful day, but evidence of a beautiful lie. I heard snippets of their downfall through a distant cousin who lived in Georgia. The marriage, built on the flimsy foundations of social ambition and mutual vanity, crumbled under the immense weight of their new stressful reality. The public disgrace combined with the crushing debt forced them to sell their expensive home. They fought, their arguments echoing through the grand empty rooms, their voices sharp with blame and recrimination. They tried to retaliate, of course. Lawyers sent threatening letters to Marcus Vance, who simply sent back a copy of his new ironclad contract with me. They called me, alternating between screaming threats and pathetic, weeping apologies. I never answered. I had said everything I needed to say. My silence was my final, most powerful statement. Back in Port Antonio, my life returned to its peaceful, steady rhythm. The sea breeze still rustled the palms. The hummingbirds still visited my hibiscus. But something within me had been reforged. I was no longer just a mother. I was Augusta Blackwood, a woman who had reclaimed her own narrative. One afternoon, a package arrived from Atlanta. It was a large, flat box. Inside, nestled in layers of tissue paper, was a single, exquisitely framed print. It was my favorite image from the series Marcus had taken. It was a close-up of my face as I sat on my throne of exile. My expression was not one of sadness or anger. It was an expression of profound, unshakable peace, of regal defiance, of a woman who knew her own worth, even when the world tried to tell her she had none. I hung the photograph in the main room of my cottage, directly across from the front door. It was the first thing anyone saw when they entered my home. It was not a monument to my shame. It was a testament to my victory. It was a declaration that my dignity was not something that could be given or taken away by others. It was inherent. It was mine. The last I heard, Amara and Julian had divorced after selling the big house in Buckhead. Their Atlanta dream in ashes. I do not know and I do not care if they stay together. They are ghosts from a different life, a different story. My story ends here in my garden with the sun warming my face and the scent of jasmine in the air. My legacy is not in the success of a daughter who scorned me, but in the quiet strength I found in my darkest hour. It is in the knowledge that I faced the ultimate disrespect and answered not with rage, but with intelligence, grace, and the devastating power of a perfectly executed plan. I had proven that true class has nothing to do with money or mansions and everything to do with character. And that truth, like the photograph on my wall, was a masterpiece of my own making. It was worth everything.